The valley was supposed to be empty by dawn. That's what the satellite feed promised. That's what the intel brief confirmed twice. But the 6 Navy SEALs pinned behind a crumbling mud wall in the Panjshir weren't debating intelligence failures anymore. They were counting ammunition and watching the tree line where muzzle flashes had begun to multiply like fireflies at dusk. Lieutenant Marcus Reeves pressed his throat mic and whispered the words nobody wanted to say on an open channel. Broken arrow. Broken arrow. This is Sentinel 2-1. We are combat ineffective, taking fire from 3 sides, requesting immediate close air support. How copy? Static answered, then more static, then a voice bored and distant from Bagram. Sentinel 2-1, be advised, nearest rotary is 40 mics out, fixed wing is Winchester and RTB. Stand by for QRF ground element, 40 minutes. Reeves looked at his teammate, Petty Officer First Class Davian Cole, whose leg was leaking red into the Afghan dust despite the tourniquet. Cole wasn't screaming. He'd stopped 5 minutes ago. That was worse. The others, Sanchez, Alcoy, Lim, and Vargas, had gone quiet too, the kind of quiet that meant they were doing math in their heads. Magazines left. Rounds per mag. Enemies visible. Enemies probable. The equation didn't look good. Then they heard it. Not the rotors they prayed for. Not the rumble of MRAPs. Something else. A sound like hell's lawnmower. A guttural mechanical roar that made the air itself vibrate. Reeves looked up. Against the pale morning sky, a single aircraft materialized from the north, flying low, dangerously low, skimming the ridgeline with the kind of reckless confidence that suggested either a suicidal maniac or someone who knew exactly what they were doing. It was an A-10 Thunderbolt II, the ugliest plane in the Air Force inventory, a machine built around a gun so obscene it could shred tanks. But it was alone. No wingman, no support package. Just one warthog descending into a valley the size of a shoebox, surrounded by peaks that could swallow it whole. "Who the hell is that?" Sanchez muttered, squinting through his rifle optic. Reeves didn't answer. He was watching the plane bank hard left, exposing its belly to the entire mountainside, a maneuver so tactically insane it bordered on theatrical. The A-10's nose dipped. The gun spun up. And then the world turned inside out. The first burst lasted 2 seconds. It sounded like a zipper ripping through sheet metal, a mechanical belch that sent 30mm rounds screaming downrange at 65 per second. The tree line where the enemy had been massing simply ceased to exist. Trees exploded into splinters. Rocks became dust. The second burst walked fire along the ridge to the east, silencing a machine gun nest that had been chewing through their cover. The third burst was surgical, precise, hitting a mortar position they hadn't even spotted yet. Reeves stared, speechless, as the A-10 rolled inverted, dove toward the valley floor like it was trying to tunnel through the earth, then pulled up so hard he swore he could hear the airframe screaming. "Sentinel 2-1, this is Hawk A-17. A voice crackled over the radio, calm, almost lazy, with a trace of something that might have been amusement. "I've got eyes on 6 friendlies and approximately 40 hostiles who just learned they picked the wrong valley. Sit tight, boys. I'm just getting started." The voice was unmistakably female. For a moment nobody moved. The SEALs exchanged glances, not quite believing what they were hearing or seeing. Reeves keyed his mic. "Hawk A-17, Sentinel 2-1, confirm you are alone. Where's your wingman?" A pause, then, "He's getting coffee, I didn't wait." There was no sarcasm in her tone, just fact. The A-10 banked again, this time coming around for another pass, and Reeves realized she wasn't orbiting at a safe altitude. She was hunting. Actively. Aggressively. The kind of flying that got you either a medal or a court-martial, depending on whether you survived. "Hawkeye, we've got wounded," Reeves transmitted, trying to keep his voice steady. "One urgent surgical we need." "I see him." The A-10's nose dipped again. "I also see 12 tangos moving through the wadi to your 6 o'clock. They're trying to flank you. Not anymore." The gun roared again. This time Reeves watched the impacts, saw the dust clouds erupt along the dry riverbed behind their position, saw bodies tumble and scatter. The A-10 was flying so low now he could see the pilot's helmet through the canopy, see the way she moved her head, scanning, always scanning. She wasn't just dropping ordnance and leaving. She was staying, circling them like a vulture that had decided to protect the wounded instead of waiting for them to die. "Who is she?" Cole rasped from the ground, his voice thin but conscious. Vargas shook his head. "No idea, but I'm buying her a drink if we live." Reeves was studying the A-10's tail number through his binos, trying to commit it to memory when the radio crackled again. "Sentinel, Hawkeye, you've got more company inbound from the northwest. Looks like reinforcements. Maybe 30 additional dismounts, 3 technicals with heavy weapons. They're serious about you." Reeves felt his stomach drop. 70 enemies total, maybe more. Against 6 men, 1 critically wounded, low on ammo, no QRF for 35 more minutes. The math had gone from bad to impossible. But before he could respond, the A-10 did something he'd never seen before. It climbed. Straight up, nearly vertical, air brakes deployed, bleeding speed until it seemed to hang motionless in the sky like a hawk deciding where to strike. Then it rolled, dove, and came screaming back down at an angle so steep Reeves thought it might auger straight into the mountainside. "Hawkeye, what are you?" "Trust me." The A-10 released something from its wings. Not a bomb, not a missile. Flares. Dozens of them, magnesium-bright, trailing white smoke as they arced across the valley, creating a curtain of light and heat that made the entire landscape look like a battlefield from another century. The enemy, spooked and confused, opened fire wildly, giving away every position they'd been trying to conceal. And Hawkeye 17, still diving, still accelerating, opened up with the gun again. This time it wasn't surgical. It was annihilation. She walked the fire across all 3 technicals in a single pass, left to right, methodical as a painter. The vehicles exploded in sequence, orange fireballs blooming against the brown earth. The dismounts scattered, trying to find cover, but there was nowhere to go. The A-10 pulled up, banked left, rolled right, and came back for another pass before the smoke had even cleared. She was relentless, tireless. And she was doing it all alone, without a wingman to watch her 6, without AWACS coordinating, without anything except her eyes and her gun and whatever kind of fury or duty was driving her. Reeves had been in combat for 9 years. He'd called in air support dozens of times. Apache gunships, Vipers, Hornets, B-1 bombers dropping JDAMs from 30,000 feet. But he'd never seen anything like this. This wasn't close air support. This was something personal. "Hawkeye," he transmitted, his voice rough, "you are danger close. I say again, danger close. We are within 100 meters of those impacts. I know exactly where you are, Sentinel. Keep your heads down." The A-10 screamed overhead so low that Sanchez swore later he could have reached up and touched the landing gear. The gun fired again, a short controlled burst that hit something behind the wall they were sheltering against. An RPG team, Reeves realized. 20 feet away. He hadn't even seen them. "How the hell?" Vargas whispered. Hawkeye's voice came back, still calm, still unhurried. "You've got more movement east side. Looks like they're trying to set up a mortar. I'm on it." The A-10 climbed again, slower this time, and Reeves noticed something. The plane was trailing smoke. Not much. Just a thin gray line from somewhere near the left engine. She'd been hit, maybe more than once. "Hawkeye, you're trailing smoke. Are you hit?" A long pause, too long, then, "Nothing I can't handle. Worry about your own problems." But her voice had changed. Tighter. Focused. The kind of voice people used when they were concentrating through pain. Reeves keyed the mic again. "Hawkeye, if you need to RTB." "I'm not leaving." 3 words, flat, final, non-negotiable, and Reeves realized with a strange clarity that she meant it literally. She wasn't leaving until they were out, even if it meant flying a damaged aircraft into the ground. The thought should have been comforting. Instead, it made him feel something he hadn't felt in years, responsible for someone else's life besides his team. The next 5 minutes were chaos. The enemy, realizing they were being systematically destroyed by a single aircraft, tried to withdraw, But Hawkeye didn't let them. She pursued, cutting off their escape routes, forcing them into kill zones, herding them like livestock. The SEALs watched, almost passive now, as the battle unfolded above and around them. Cole, despite his wound, had propped himself up enough to watch the sky. "She flies like she's angry," he said quietly. Akoy, the team medic, glanced over while changing Cole's bandage. "Or like she's got something to prove." Reeves said nothing. He was watching the smoke trail from the A-10 grow thicker. Finally, after what felt like an eternity but was probably only 8 minutes, the radio crackled with a different voice. Male. Anxious. "Hawkeye 17, this is Hawkeye 16. What is your status? You broke formation and went off comms. We've been trying to reach you for." "I'm busy, Stryker. Keep the coffee warm." "Jaina, the old man is going to." "Tell the old man I found some friends who needed help. I'll explain later." She cut him off, then switched frequencies back to Sentinel's channel. "Sentinel 2-1, Hawkeye. Your QRF just radioed their 10 mics out. I'm going to make sure nothing surprises them on the way in. You boys okay for 10 more minutes?" Reeves looked at his team. Cole was pale but stable. Everyone else was bruised, exhausted but alive. "We'll manage, Hawkeye, thank you." "Don't thank me yet. I still need to land this thing." The humor in her voice was thin, almost brittle. The A-10 climbed higher, circling wider now, the smoke trail more visible against the blue sky. Reeves felt his chest tighten. She was hurt worse than she was admitting, but she stayed. For 10 more minutes she circled that valley like a guardian angel with a 30mm cannon, and nothing moved that she didn't see, nothing threatened that she didn't eliminate. When the MRAPs finally rolled in, dust plumes rising behind them, the A-10 waggled its wings once, a gesture so old-fashioned it belonged in a World War II movie, and turned north, limping back toward Bagram. Reeves watched until it disappeared behind the mountains. He didn't know her name, didn't know her face, but he knew he owed her his life. They all did. Later, after the medevac, after the debriefs, after the adrenaline faded and the shakes set in, Reeves did something he almost never did. He filed a commendation request, not the usual paperwork, a real one, detailed, emphatic. He described every pass, every decision, every impossible maneuver. He wrote it like a man trying to convince someone that what he'd witnessed was real and not some fever dream conjured by blood, loss, and fear. 3 weeks later, he got a response, not from a bureaucrat, from a Colonel Air Force stationed at Bagram. The email was brief. "Your request has been forwarded. The pilot you're referring to is Captain Jaina Kale, call sign Hawkeye. She's been flying A-10s in theater for 18 months. She's also been recommended for Article 15 proceedings twice for unauthorized solo engagements. Your statement may help, or it may not. She doesn't seem to care either way." Reeves read it 3 times. Then he looked up Captain Jaina Kale. What he found surprised him. She wasn't some hotshot fresh out of flight school. She was 34, prior enlisted. She'd spent 6 years as a combat controller on the ground before going to officer training school and earning her wings. She knew what it was like to be the one calling for air support. She knew what it felt like to watch the sky and pray someone would come. That knowledge changed everything about how Reeves understood that day in the valley. She hadn't been showboating. She'd been saving them the way she'd once wished someone had saved her. The Article 15 proceedings happened. Reeves testified. So did Cole, Sanchez, Akoy, Lim, and Vargas. So did a dozen other ground units who'd been saved by Hawkeye over the past year and a half. The charges were dropped, quietly, without ceremony, and Captain Jaina Kale went back to flying. But the story didn't end there. Stories like that never do. 6 months later, Reeves was back stateside, training a new SEAL platoon in California, when he got a call from an Air Force public affairs officer. They were putting together a feature for a documentary series, something about modern air support. They wanted to interview him about the Panjshir incident. He agreed, mostly because he thought it might give Kale some recognition she'd never ask for herself. The interview was straightforward until the producer asked him a question he wasn't expecting. What do you think motivated her to take those risks? Reeves thought about it. He thought about the voice on the radio, calm and unshakable. He thought about the smoke trail and the way she'd refused to leave. He thought about her background, the years on the ground before the years in the air. Finally, he said, I think she remembers what it's like to be the one who's stuck. I think she flies like someone who never wants anyone to feel abandoned. The producer nodded. We reached out to Captain Kale for comment. She declined to be interviewed. Of course she did, Reeves thought. People like Jaina Kale didn't do what they did for recognition. They did it because someone had to, and they were the ones with the skills and the guts to try. But the documentary aired anyway, and something strange happened. It went viral, not because of the explosions or the tactics or the dramatic reenactments. It went viral because people latched onto the story of a lone A-10 pilot who disobeyed orders to save 6 men she'd never met. The comment sections filled with speculation, admiration, argument. Some people called her reckless, others called her a hero. Veterans mostly called her something else, one of us. And still, Jaina Kale said nothing. She kept flying, kept doing her job, kept showing up when people needed her and disappearing before anyone could pin medals on her chest. Until one day, she didn't come back. It happened on a routine mission, or what should have been routine. A convoy taking fire near Kandahar. Hawk A-17 responded with her wingman Hawk A-16. They cleared the area, suppressed the enemy, and turned for home. Standard procedure. But somewhere between Kandahar and Bagram, Jaina Kale's A-10 developed a catastrophic hydraulic failure. The kind of failure that meant she had maybe 60 seconds to decide. Eject over hostile territory or try to nurse the dying aircraft back to friendly airspace. She chose the latter. She flew for 12 more minutes on emergency backup systems, fighting the stick the entire way, keeping the nose up through sheer physical force. Her wingman, Captain Dylan Stryker, flew beside her, talking her through it, offering to guide her to an emergency strip. But the A-10 was losing altitude. Slowly. Inevitably. The mountains were getting closer. Jaina, you need to punch out, Stryker said, his voice tight. You're not going to make it. Not over the villages, she replied. Her voice was steady, always steady. Too many people, I'll make the ridge. She didn't make the ridge, but she made it past the villages. She kept that broken aircraft in the air long enough to clear the populated areas, and then, only then, when there was nothing below but empty rock and scrub, did she finally eject. The A-10 cartwheeled into the mountainside 3 seconds later, disintegrating in a fireball that could be seen from Bagram. Jaina Kale survived. Broken collarbone, shattered wrist, concussion, but alive. The rescue helicopter found her sitting on a boulder, still in her flight suit, looking more annoyed than injured. When they loaded her onto the stretcher, the PJ asked if she was okay. She looked at him like he'd asked if water was wet. I'm fine. Is my plane totaled? Yes, ma'am. Damn, I liked that one. The story should have ended there too. Medical discharge, honorable service. Move on, but 3 weeks into her recovery, something happened that nobody anticipated. The Taliban released a video. Grainy, poorly edited, but unmistakable. It showed the wreckage of an A-10, or what was left of it, burning on a mountainside. And it showed something else. Footage, apparently recovered from a fighter's phone, of the moments before the crash. Alone, flying erratically, smoke pouring from its tail, struggling to stay airborne. And in the background, voices. Insurgents watching, waiting, assuming the plane would crash in their territory and they'd have an American pilot to capture or kill. But the plane kept flying, kept going, kept clearing distance. And when it finally went down, it was miles away, unreachable. The video ended with one of the fighters spitting in frustration and saying something in Pashto. The translation, provided by a dozen online sources within hours, was simple. She would not give us the satisfaction. The video was meant as propaganda. It backfired spectacularly. Within 48 hours, it had been viewed 18 million times. Within a week, Jaina Kale's name was trending worldwide. News outlets picked it up. Veteran groups amplified it. Even civilians who knew nothing about military aviation understood the symbolism. A pilot, wounded, aircraft dying, who'd flown past the point of survival just to deny the enemy a victory. And still, Jaina Kale said nothing. She recovered in a military hospital in Germany, refusing interviews, declining appearances, ignoring the flood of messages and requests. The Air Force, sensing a public relations goldmine, tried to convince her to participate in a medal ceremony. She told them politely to shove it. Her exact words were not recorded, but witnesses said her delivery was memorable. What she did instead was request immediate reinstatement to flight status. The doctors said no. The flight surgeons said no. Command said no. She appealed. She argued. She passed every test they threw at her, physical and psychological. She flew simulators until the instructors ran out of scenarios to challenge her with. And finally, grudgingly, they cleared her. 6 months after the crash, Captain Jaina Kale returned to Afghanistan. Same airframe, same mission, same call sign, as if nothing had happened. But something had changed. The troops on the ground knew her now. When Hawkeye checked in on the radio, people paid attention. When she showed up overhead, people relaxed. And when she left, they felt more alone than they had before. She'd become something more than a pilot. She'd become a symbol, not the shiny recruitment poster kind. The real kind. The kind that meant someone's got your back even when everything's falling apart. Reeves heard about her return through the veteran grapevine. He sent her an email, simple, direct. Glad you're back, stay safe. He didn't expect a response. He got one anyway. 3 words, define safe, Lieutenant. He smiled. Then he forwarded the email to his team. They all smiled too. But the Air Force brass weren't smiling. Because Jaina Kale, for all her skill, had a problem. She couldn't stop taking risks. Or rather, she couldn't stop prioritizing the mission and the people on the ground over her own safety. She'd already bent or broken half a dozen regulations. She'd gone Winchester, out of ammunition, more times than any pilot in theater. She'd logged more danger-close gun runs than anyone else in the squadron. She'd accumulated enough incident reports to fill a filing cabinet. Her squadron commander, Lieutenant Colonel Richard Halford, called her into his office one day, not to discipline her, just to talk, off the record, man to man, or rather officer to officer. "Kale," he said, leaning back in his chair, "you're the best pilot I've got, maybe the best I've ever seen, but you're going to get yourself killed." She sat across from him, calm, hands folded in her lap. "Respectfully, sir, that's not your decision. It is if you're flying one of my aircraft." "Then ground me." Halford stared at her. "You want me to ground you?" "No, but if you think I'm a liability, that's your call. I won't argue. I'll just request a transfer." "To where? There's no other unit that would take you with your record." She smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. "There's always someone who needs a pilot who doesn't quit, sir." Halford sighed. He was a good officer, a smart one. He knew when he was beaten. "I'm not grounding you, Kale, but I am ordering you to stop flying solo, unauthorized missions. You've got a wingman for a reason. Use him." "Yes, sir." She left his office, and for a while she followed orders. She flew with her wingman. She coordinated properly. She played by the rules. But the thing about people like Jaina Kale is that rules are context-dependent. And when the context is someone dying and you're the only one in position to help, rules become suggestions. It happened again 3 months later. A Marine forward operating base under attack. Heavy casualties. Medevac inbound but taking fire. The Marines were screaming for air support. Hawk A-17 and Hawk A-16 were nearby, refueling from a tanker. They heard the call. Stryker wanted to wait for clearance. Jaina didn't. She broke off, plugged in just enough fuel to get there and back, maybe, and went anyway. By the time Stryker caught up, she'd already made 2 passes and silenced the enemy mortar position that was targeting the medevac. By the time command found out, the Marines were safe and the medevac was away. By the time Halford could chew her out, The Marine Co. had already sent a glowing commendation. Halford called her in again. This time he didn't sit. He stood behind his desk, arms crossed, jaw tight. "Cale, what part of follow orders is unclear to you?" "The part where following orders means people die, sir." "You don't get to make that call." "Someone has to." They stared at each other. Halford knew he should discipline her, write her up, maybe even court-martial her. But he also knew that if he did, he'd lose the best close air support pilot in theater, and more people would die, not because of malice, just because Jaina Cale wouldn't be there. He sat down, rubbed his face. "You're going to make me complicit in this, aren't you?" "I'm not asking you to do anything, sir. I'm just doing my job." "Your job is to follow the rules of engagement." "My job is to bring people home." Halford had no answer for that. He waved her out. She left, and he sat there, alone in his office, wondering if he was enabling a hero or a disaster waiting to happen. Maybe both. But across Afghanistan, in dusty outposts and forward bases, among soldiers and Marines and SEALs and Special Forces, the word was spreading. If you're in trouble, call for Hawkeye. If she's in the area, she'll come. She always comes. She might bend every rule in the book. She might scare the hell out of you with how close she flies, but she'll come. And she won't leave until you're safe. That reputation became currency. It became legend. And legends once started are hard to stop. The moment that cemented Jaina Cale's place in modern military lore happened on a cold November morning near the Pakistan border. A Special Forces team, call sign Razor 32, was compromised during a reconnaissance mission. They'd been shadowing a high-value target when everything went sideways. Someone talked. Someone betrayed them. Within minutes, they were surrounded by over 100 hostiles, pinned in a compound with no way out, no quick reaction force close enough, and a rapidly closing window before they'd be overrun. The radio call went out. Any station, this is Razor 32, troops in contact. We are black on ammo, surrounded, request immediate fire support, grid follows. Bagram responded, nothing available. Everyone was committed elsewhere or out of range. The AC-130 gunship that might have helped was grounded for maintenance. The nearest Apache was 30 minutes away. Razor 32 didn't have 30 minutes. They had maybe 10. And then crackling through the static, a now familiar voice. Razor 32, Hawk A-17, I'm 12 minutes out. What's your situation? The Special Forces team leader, a grizzled captain named Hale, didn't waste time with pleasantries. Hawkeye, we are surrounded, over 100 dismounts, fortified positions. They're about to assault the compound. We need fire now, not in 12 minutes. Understood. Paint your position with IR strobes. Stay inside. I'm coming hot. Hawkeye, you can't engage without. I can do whatever I need to do. IR strobes now. Hale looked at his team. They were down to pistols and grenades. The enemy was massing outside. He made the call. Copy, Hawkeye. Strobes are active. We're northeast corner of the compound. Hostiles are everywhere else. I see you. 11 minutes. 11 minutes felt like an eternity. The Special Forces team could hear the enemy shouting, coordinating, preparing for the final push. They braced for the assault, knowing it would come before the A-10 arrived, knowing they'd probably die before help reached them. But then something strange happened. They heard a sound, distant, growing closer, not rotors, not jet engines, something older, deeper. The sound of a radial engine, impossibly loud, echoing off the mountains, and with it another sound, music, blasting from external speakers. Flight of the Valkyries. Hale looked at his team. Is she playing Wagner? One of his men, a staff sergeant named Ortiz, started laughing. It was the kind of laughter that comes when you've accepted you're going to die, and suddenly the universe throws you something so absurd you can't process it. She's insane. She's an angel, another one said. The A-10 appeared over the ridgeline like something from a myth. It didn't circle. It didn't orbit. It dove straight down, nose pointed at the earth, air brakes deployed, dropping like a stone with a chainsaw. The music was deafening now, incongruous and terrifying and somehow perfect. The enemy, confused and panicking, opened fire. Dozens of rifles and machine guns, all aimed at the descending aircraft. Jaina Kale ignored them. At 500 feet, she pulled out of the dive, rolled, inverted, and fired. The GAU-8 roared. The gun runs from before had been precise, surgical. This was biblical. She held the trigger for 4 full seconds, longer than any manual recommended, and the 30mm rounds carved a trench through the earth, obliterating everything in their path. The compound shook. Dust and debris exploded upward. The enemy formations disintegrated. She pulled up, rolled upright, and came around for another pass. This time she didn't use the gun. She pickled 2 Mavericks, air-to-ground missiles, and sent them screaming into the largest concentration of hostiles. The explosions were massive, orange and black, shockwaves rippling outward. "Razor Hawkeye, you've got a clear path south. Move now." Hale didn't hesitate. "Let's go, let's go." The team grabbed their wounded, grabbed their gear, and ran. Behind them, the A-10 made pass after pass, suppressing every position, every threat, every attempt to pursue. Jaina flew lower than any sane pilot would, so low that Hale could see her canopy, see her helmet, see the determination in her body language even from the ground. They made it half a click before the exfil bird arrived. As they loaded up, Hale looked back. The compound was burning. The enemy was scattered, and the A-10 was still circling, still watching, still protecting them even though the fight was over. Hale keyed his mic one last time. "Hawkeye, Razor 3-2, we're clear. Thank you doesn't cover it." A pause, then, "Just doing my job, Razor, stay safe out there." The A-10 turned east and disappeared into the morning sun. Hale would later tell people that he'd seen combat in 3 wars, worked with dozens of pilots, and never once encountered anyone who flew like Jaina Kale. "She doesn't fly to survive," he said in an interview years later. "She flies like she's already dead and just hasn't told her body yet. Like nothing can touch her because she's already given everything up. It's terrifying. It's beautiful. It's the reason I'm alive." But the brass saw it differently. The unauthorized engagement, the reckless flying, the blatant disregard for protocol. This time they couldn't ignore it. Lieutenant Colonel Halford was ordered to ground her pending an investigation. He tried to argue. He was overruled. 3 days after the Razor 3-2 incident, Captain Jaina Kale was officially grounded. She didn't protest, didn't argue. She turned in her wings, cleaned out her locker, and disappeared. For 2 weeks nobody heard from her. Not her squadron, not her wingman, not anyone. Stryker tried calling, email, even showed up at her quarters. Nothing. It was like she'd vanished. And then on a quiet Thursday afternoon, the Secretary of Defense received a letter. Not an email. An actual handwritten letter delivered through official channels. It was signed by 347 active duty service members. Soldiers, Marines, SEALs, Special Forces, combat controllers, pararescue men, even a few Air Force personnel. The letter was simple. It outlined dates, grid coordinates, and outcomes. Every single instance where Captain Jaina Kale had saved lives. Every rule she'd bent, every risk she'd taken, and at the end, a single paragraph. "We understand that military discipline requires adherence to rules and regulations. We also understand that wars are not won by following rules. They are won by people willing to sacrifice everything for those beside them. Captain Kale is that person. Grounding her does not make us safer. It makes us more likely to die. Respectfully, we request her immediate reinstatement. If that is not possible, we request an explanation as to why regulations matter more than lives." The letter went viral within hours. Someone leaked it, probably intentionally. The media picked it up. Veterans groups amplified it. Politicians, sensing an opportunity, weighed in. The Air Force found itself in an impossible position. Court-martial a pilot beloved by the ground troops or ignore regulations and set a dangerous precedent. They chose a third option. They promoted her. Captain Jaina Kale became Major Jaina Kale. They gave her a medal, Silver Star, for valor, for the Panjshir incident officially, though everyone knew it was for all of it. The ceremony was small, private, no media. Jaina stood at attention while a general she'd never met pinned the medal to her chest and said things about duty and courage. She said nothing, just saluted, turned, and walked out. Stryker caught up with her outside. "You okay?" She looked at the medal, then at him. "They're trying to control me by rewarding me. It won't work." "I know, but hey, free medal." She almost smiled, almost. "I didn't do it for medals, Dylan." "I know, that's why you got one." They stood there for a moment, two pilots who'd flown through hell together, saying nothing because nothing needed to be said. Finally, Jaina looked up at the sky. Clear, blue, empty. "I need to get back in the air." "You will, just maybe follow a few more rules this time." She didn't answer. They both knew she wouldn't. Major Jaina Kale returned to flight status 2 days later. Same squadron, same call sign, but something had shifted. The troops on the ground didn't just respect her anymore. They revered her. Her call sign became shorthand for hope. Hawkeye's up meant you were covered. Hawkeye's Winchester meant you were on your own. Her presence became a strategic asset, not just tactically but psychologically. Soldiers fought harder when they knew she was overhead. They took risks they wouldn't otherwise take, because they believed she'd get them out. That belief was both a gift and a burden, because Jaina Kale